And hello, and welcome to another Industry Live Sensitive Assumptions. I'm ThatKimberly, and my co-host today, Miss Lissi Daniels, is going to be joining me, and we're going to be talking a little bit about conflict and how to resolve conflict as a leader. So,
Yes.
yeah, we're going to have that conversation. But before we do that, I want to remind people that we are live on my ThatKimberly Facebook. That's a business profile because I do have a personal page. There's also my LinkedIn that we're live. We're also live on YouTube and live on Twitter. So wherever you're watching us from, if you have a question for either of us, put it in the comments, tag one or the other, so that way we see it quicker. Or we'll answer it live if it comes up now. If you watch us on the replay, make sure you put hashtag and where you watched us from. We want to know where you watched us from. And if this advice or this topic, if something like this has ever happened to you, tell us in the comments or share this with a friend if you know this information would be helpful to them. So those are the instructions that I have for you today. And without further ado, let's get into this conversation of conflict.
Yeah, I know, right? Thank you again for having me on your podcast, Kimberly. I'm so
Thank
excited.
you.
So, yeah, we're going to dive into some how to resolve some conflict, right?
Yes, because we all have gone through it, right?
Yes.
It's something that unfortunately is a lot more now than since COVID, like you on an everyday basis, not just in the workspace, But
Hmm.
have you ever, like, because we all a lot more remote, more people are remote.
Yeah.
How has it ever happened to you where, because I'm a very kind of like, it's there's not a lot of gray for me. It's either black and white, and sometimes when I don't know how to express what or
Mm.
communicate exactly what I want to say, I get real tearful. I get like almost emotional, crying. It's either and that either means I'm angry or I'm sad.
Yeah,
And then
no. I definitely can relate to that. I'm the same way. I think it just, you can't find those right words. And I've been in those situations. I've had the pro and the con of it where, you get upset and it could be with your leader or with someone else in the situation. And all you do is want to have those downfalls of crying. And then someone, if they are not really listening to you or understanding or really being there with empathy, then it causes you as an individual to shut down. And,
yeah,
and I've had that in my career life where I felt those tears start to come
yes,
forward, and I'm like, oh gosh, no, 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 no. And then, instead of having that leader or the person who was listening show the empathy, but just to be like, you are getting emotional, that doesn't really do too well to someone if you're trying to resolve a
yeah.
conflict in a situation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I
So
mean, we already know the reason we're crying because there is conflict. The reason
yeah.
that we're emotional is because there is something going on that's
Hmm.
not being communicated properly.
Correct. And I think, you got to sometimes sit back, even as leaders. We're not always perfect, right? But at the end of the day, I think we have to be able to communicate, right? And
Yeah.
really listen to understand and be very effective when we're communicating with individuals, especially if we're trying to resolve a situation and listening to either that one person or either two different parties and regarding what they're going through and figuring
Yeah.
out how can you find that middle ground. And I think sometimes it could be a little challenging depending on the extreme of it or the context of it. But
Yeah.
I think we have to kind of set a tone to where we as leaders, we have to be patient, right?
Yeah.
Especially
Yeah.
to resolve that.
And as a leader, you are 9 times out of 10, if you are the mediator
Yes.
to this
Yes.
conflict, right? And hopefully it's not because you're having conflict with someone, that reports to you, but if it is, either way, you should take the position as a leader. I felt like put yourself in a spots to succeed by, like you said, listening to figure it out, and then for me, I always like to reiterate what it is that I think I heard
Hmm.
them say,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
um to then narrow in so that if I do need to do some resolution, figuring out what that resolution is.
Yeah, that goes into your active listening, right? Listening to understand and listening to see what is it that you can help with in that situation, or how to diffuse that situation. And a lot of times to resolve a conflict is literally someone needing you to listen to them, right? And understand what is going on and not taking sides. I think that's so important, to pull back and be that middle person, but being that mediator, but at the same time asking the right questions, going back into making sure that you're letting them know that they're valid for what they're feeling, and you're understanding what they're feeling. Now let's kind of work through what you're feeling and how can we come to a middle ground, because at the end of the day, we all have to work together, right? In a sense, but what can we do differently to make sure that we can resolve that?
Yeah. Asking the right questions is seeking to understand. And the more we seek information, what I found, the more questions that I ask, to better, it just betters my conflict resolution, helps me help them resolve whatever's going wrong. Like, and again, I didn't put this up earlier, but I thought about it. This is not medical.
It's not medical
or what's it called? No, this is professional advice.
Yes, personal experiences.
Yes, this is coming from our personal experience that we're taking, that we want to share with others about this. So just so people know, I wanted to clarify that we're taking from our own experiences and trying to figure out the best way, whatever that way is when it comes.
Yeah, I think you can't steer away from conflict, right? It's going to happen every day in conversations, whether it's personal or work related. It's just, how do we find an outcome and solution for it? And I think the biggest thing, like I had mentioned earlier, is just really, effectively communicating, but also really making sure we listen. Back a long time ago when I was on site, I used to always try to build out resolution gamification games within my team.
Yeah.
And the reason
people, that means gamification means that like within her team, that she gives prizes or makes a game, or whatever it is amongst their team. Because I know that gamification,
that's a trainer speaking into me.
Yeah. I'm helping those old folks in the back understand what that means. Okay. Not for the youngins.
Thank you, Kimberly.
You're welcome.
It's about, coming with ideas, scenarios, situations to where you can bring to your team. It may not be any cause or any issues you're having with your team, but what it does is it builds a stronger relationship with everyone, and how you're building out, and come up with different scenarios, no matter what, if it's with the resident, whether it's with a team member or just anything in general, or with another leader, but how to come across and how to effectively resolve it using any type of, games, or any type of brainstorming session, any type of way of, role playing back and forth. All of that is something that I used to do a long time ago. And what I come to find out is I had teams that really enjoyed it. So every weekly meeting, they were coming up with different ideas, and then we would put it all together and come up with scenarios. But all I did is kind of strengthen your overall. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great team building for sure. Here we have a question from Brian Crawford. Thank you, Brian. What kind of questions do you ask in an interview as if you're trying to hire for that skill set?
Oh, that's a really good question. I would ask, how can you approach conflict with empathy and understanding?
Ooh, yeah.
How can you approach conflict with empathy and understanding? And I think that's a skill set that sometimes you sit back and you see, does that leader have that empathy? And that sometimes we miss that component.
Yeah, definitely asking. That's a great question to ask. Thank you, Brian, for the question. Yeah. It definitely get if they not how, or telling them to tell you a story of how they did it. Right?
Yeah, it's the
resolve all of it. Yeah, it's definitely something, the way that they work with others, and if they show empathy when they're doing that.
Exactly. I think that's the main key to it. And then you have a better understanding. But then what happens is you're building the trust back in that team. And then they're going to be very open to come and talk to you more when something arises, or if you're trying to diffuse a situation, but always never try to diffuse the situation in front of everyone. Diffuse
you
the
got to
situation.
take.
I know we kind of talked about that,
Yeah.
Kimberly, in regards to separating and then listen and then bringing together to kind of find a commonality.
Yeah, you're the mediator. As the leader, you're the mediator, and you want to make sure that both sides get heard, and that you understand what they're saying. So you know, repeating back to them that what you heard, so that way you can come up with a reasonable resolution, you know, conflict resolution, and somebody's not just sitting there crying, right? Like
yes.
That when you tell somebody you're being emotional. All you're doing is shutting that person down instead of asking them or seeking to understand, why are you crying? What is making you cry? What, you know, and giving them that space to be able to tell you why.
It is. I think when someone gets told you're being emotional in a situation that you can't control, it doesn't really help. And then I think at the end of the day, it loses that camaraderie of respect for that individual, in a sense to where all they had to do is like, okay, I sense you're emotional. I see it. What can I do to help get you through that? What are the things that you need from me? And what are the things that, and then vice versa. And then what happens is you're putting yourself in that situation to work through that problem. And sometimes it's easier said than done, but sometimes it's easier than you telling someone you're emotional, in the sense, because that could even lead down a different path.
You're making them shut down when you say that.
Yeah.
I mean, if anybody has ever been told that, think about how they felt the minute that they said you're being emotional. Like you just don't, you know, you don't know what to say. So you shut down even more, and you don't communicate.
Yeah.
So everybody loses.
I think these skills can even be personal life skills too, because at the end of the day, when you're speaking with someone and you're trying to resolve a conflict, you don't want to let that person who you're trying to resolve either feel like they're not value what they're feeling, acknowledge their feelings in that sense, but also making sure that you're not disregarding it at the same time. So
acknowledge it, and the when you ask that question, why, you're showing the other person, you're trying to seek to understand. So it's definitely it's a skill set, and that is, like you said, you know, how do you do that with empathy? You know, tell me a story about how you did that. I definitely, well, I know that when we had conflict in the one or few times, we had very few conflicts in our office, but the one that stood out once was two team members having a disagreement on editing, and there were two males, and they got up in each other's face, and I just happened to be in the office that day and came, you know, to the tail end of it. But it definitely was a scary situation, and me and my business partner separated them, asked them both individually, you know, why are they upset, what was going on, and then basically having to ask them to go home and just take a breather, because we couldn't, you know, even though we separated them and we could talk to them individually, there was no space in our office, because it was a small office for them to communicate together, for all four of us to be in one room. So we had to wait and come back the next day.
I think that it's so important. I think that's a strong skill in itself with leaders, is having the empathy to understand, but also understanding to how to ask goes back to the why factor in those questions and diffusing it. I think the worst thing it is to try to play a side or play a role and take sides. That's not going to help. Again, we're like driving down the middle of that. But I think also in training components is really, you know, having resources for your teams to, you know, train on and learn on, and building that back into their team building exercises, whether that's weekly or monthly, whatever you have set forth.
That's pretty cool that you did it weekly or daily, you know, to give those, you're flexing those muscles so that if those conflicts arise, that they're able to resolve it. Here's another question for Brian. Let me read correctly. What are the things you do if there's two equal employees of yours who are frustrated because they are at an impasse or difference in opinions or approaches on a particular matter? Okay, so that was this conflict. We basically, what had come down to is that they had never communicated that they did not agree on this one project, but there had been several disagreements that they never communicated to the other person. So this one just bubbled over. So basically it came down to us having them both state what it is that they were upset about. And I think we even ended up saying, well, it's up to the client to decide. It's not up for you as the subjective editor, because, you know, everybody's opinion on art is subjective. But since the client was paying for it, we let the client decide, and not, and so we gave them two versions, which was great, because then the editors could see that it's not anything personal. Like I'm not, it's not about what I subjectively think looks good.
Yeah. We
actually got the client involved, but it's definitely something that if you're not communicating that impasse, you're gonna, it's gonna build up, and it's not gonna look pretty.
Exactly. So I like how you say that. I think that's where it goes back to making sure that, you know, you build back something every week within your team to be able to handle those situations, but even within yourself, handling those situations and really role playing and practicing that, how to overcome that, because you're going to have some type of conflict, but at the same time, to agree to disagree, but then how can we steadily work and make it very feasible to where it's not going to be like a sore apple in a team environment,
and that there's going to be some sort of resolution that they
definitely
and it's not coming from, like, the leadership is mediating. They're not making that decision. They're helping them to work together, like, you know, like you're talking about team building.
Navigate.
Navigate.
I like that. Definitely.
Here's another question, Brian. I love Brian today.
Brian is on it.
What do you do to prepare to make an announcement of what's going to be bad news for your team?
That's a good one. I think that collective.
I'll let you take that one.
I think, you know, it's never easy to communicate bad news to a team, more or less, but still keep that camaraderie and their spirits lifted and being in situations. It's about being authentic, right? I think in a sense, we can't sugarcoat things. We got to really play it out for the truth of what we can, but also being open to listen to what they may be going through when they hear the bad news, and also understanding that you acknowledge their feelings at the same time of why, whatever that situation is. I think you never want to deliver news to a team and say, well, this is it, sorry, and then move on. You want to deliver news to a team and be like, this is what's going on. I just want to be transparent. I want to be honest, but
I'll take questions.
Yes, I'm here to listen to you. What are you feeling? But don't just leave them at that. It's a constant check-in process, no matter what.
Yeah, it is definitely something you have to prepare and find the positives in, so you can relay with those positives, you know, why that decision was being made. Not intentionally try to, you know, make it bad news, but maybe it's that, maybe that if you can find a positive spin on which what they might think is bad news, because really at the end of the day, you are, as a leader, there to help continue keep them motivated. So if you can find this, you know, what it is that to spin it to make it good news, then I would encourage somebody to do that. Like, I remember when we sold, and to tell our teams about it, we know it was exciting for us, and we you know, we all these great things were going to come of it, like that we were going to grow even more, all these, you know, great things, but we knew they would be scared about the unknown, right? And so we just left space for them to ask questions and for them to tell us what they were scared about. You know, that's also another.
No, I totally 100% agree with you. And anybody, I think we all have gone through those transitions and had those situations occur. And as leaders, we have to be mindful of how we communicate that effectively. Again, it goes back to that, but also be very mindful of their feelings too. So if they want to continue to speak on it, we have to allow them to know that we're open to it, right? We're here. We're going to help navigate them. But I love the fact of the positive, because I always try to find a positive twist in every situation that's negative, that let them see the silver lining at the end of the tunnel as well. But also make sure you know that you're there with them through every step of whatever that situation is.
Yeah. So they have more confidence. And And
Yeah.
you as the leader, if you've got to bring in HR to help you with
Yeah.
that, do those things, right? Like
Yeah.
it was definitely something we had a third party HR, but we leaned on them on suggestions. Always, because every situation is going to be different, and because all our brains are different, we all are going to communicate differently.
Yes.
We just need to over communicate and make sure that we take feedback from and get other resources, tap into other
Yes, that's what they're there for.
Number one, from someone who was in that position to tap into other resources.
No, 100%. I think you've got to. That's what they're there for. They help for you to lean on to. And if you don't have the answers, that is where you tap into that resource and be able to communicate that. But also, I feel like you got to be patient too. I think that's hard, but it's probably one of the best skill sets as well too.
Yeah,
to ensure navigate.
Yeah, leaning on HR is always something that we I guess because we didn't have a big HR department, we leaned on it. So
yeah,
but even companies that's what HR is there for.
Exactly.
They're good, fun people that are just trying to keep us out of trouble, right?
That's exactly right. They help you communicate things when you can't. Love them.
Yes, because when we can't communicate, bad things happen. So we don't. That's where conflict comes up. It's definitely it is something that I had to learn over time that not to avoid the conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely got more comfortable about being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So it is something that, and asking the questions like, Brian, no, thank you, Brian. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
When you ask the questions, like Brian's asking these questions because he thoughtfully wants to know, you don't know unless you ask, right?
You don't. And always ask questions until you get clarity in whatever situation. And I think that's most important. And if you can't get it clarity at one point, go to your next resources, is what you're saying, with HR or whoever it is within your company to help with that solution. I think that all comes back to resolving, and that's your goal. Your goal is to resolve any conflict you have, but at the same time, make sure you have that middle ground too.
Yeah, effective communication is definitely key to all this. If we're not having the conversations and we're not doing also the follow-up, right? Like there's follow-up to this. You can't act like nothing ever happened.
No, you can't. That's what it goes back to. Like if you have like situation like Brian has said with bad news, you don't just leave it and move on. You definitely have to keep going back and following up with the situation and making sure your teams are good and checking in. And maybe that goes back where before you didn't have any type of implement weekly conversations with your teams on how to resolve conflict. Now you're following up with them and putting those in place and working through that and navigating that to make you guys even stronger as a team, and include everyone that's within your office as well too. I think it's very helpful.
If that doesn't violate
any of your policies.
There we go. There's some sort of policy in there that I was trying to get the words out. Brian asks, what are your favorite leadership reads?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Anything, honestly, John Maxwell, as leadership. I believe that as leaders, we are servant leadership. That's what I really guide to. There's another really good book that I got, which is emotional intelligence. I think that's another key thing. I don't remember the top author, but I have it right here in front of me, but it's HBR's 10 must reads. It's on emotional intelligence. And it really talks about how to navigate as a leader. And I think there's so many different levels to learn on that. So that's one of my biggest ones as well.
I liked anything. I always like anything Gary Vee. Everybody knows that I'm a huge Gary Vee fan. But this last book that he put out, 12 and a half, leveraging the emotional ingredients necessary for building success. He talked from a leadership standpoint in this book that I highly recommend people read or listen to. So it's something. And just the fact that, Brian.
Yes, he is the GOAT.
The GOAT. Greatest of all times for you kids out there who don't know what GOAT means. It's the opposite now. I got to give context for the youngins.
I love it.
I mean, unless they played sports, they know what the GOAT reference is. But if they're It might be a
Basketball, all-time GOAT, who's the GOAT player,
yeah.
all of that, you know.
Yeah, but
I
if
love
they're
it.
not into sports and they're young, they usually don't hear that goat word. I feel like
True,
very
true.
many people talking about, Maxwell as the goat, right? That's like,
I
and even
never, that's
then,
an awesome one. I like that.
even then, there's an R&B artist that goes by the name of Maxwell. So who are you talking about? The goat, you know?
That is true. That is true. But no, it's John Maxwell.
Oh, yes, Brian. Michael Jackson equals the goat emoji.
I love that. I love that.
Yes.
But yeah, those are my go-tos on a lot of things when it comes to leadership and just growing as an individual. I think one thing that as a leader, we're never stop growing, continue to build and think outside of the box of what you want
Yeah.
to do. But in areas that you're not strong in, dive into that. I had to do that many years. So
never stop learning. If
yeah.
we think we have learned, if we well, one, it's truly a brain exercise. It's something that's good for our brain health to never stop learning and educating ourselves. So we should be, especially as we, and I'm going to raise my hand because I'm going to be 50 this year.
No.
For those folks in their 40s going into their 50s, that is the prime time for us to be learning something new, and because it exercises our brain. If our brain is a muscle, and if we're not learning something new, we're not exercising the brain. So and that's a whole other
another topic, right?
Live topic on its own, but it is something that I'm very passionate about learning and collaborating and doing things that gets us out of our comfort zone is super helpful for the brain.
I agree with you. And, and tap into whatever resources your company has, tap into what other associations, anything that you can tap into to help grow is only going to make you grow. And I think at the end of the day, it starts on that level. So
yeah, most associations, companies, we're speaking, like we can speak from the multifamily association side, but also I'm pretty sure there are lots of other in other vertical associations that you're a member of that association and they provide you education. A lot of the associations, that's what they're there for, is education. So make sure that you ask your companies about, if your companies don't have those resources, if you can tap into the associations that they're members of.
100%, because I definitely, that's where a lot of my growth has come from. So definitely.
Great. So do you have any wrap up, just for the sake, we're doing great on time and I just want to be mindful of everybody, but is there any, parting thoughts about this conflict?
Yes. I always will say to, create a positive environment, not impact, but yes, you want to make an impact, but create a positive environment when it comes to being a leader or just in itself to help open that dialogue when it comes to any kind of conflict that you may see that arises or stirs in, because when you have that positive environment, then what happens is then you building that trust. And when you build that trust, then you're going to sit there and be able to walk through those steps. So if anything I can lead with is always keep in mind is, as a leader, create the positive environment to where your team can feel comfortable to come and have that open dialogue with you.
Yeah. Making it a safe place.
Yeah.
Making it a safe place to communicate to you whatever they're having those conflicts. That's great.
Exactly.
Yeah. Putting the positive spin on it is
there you go. The silver lining, the light.
Yeah, the sunshine and rainbows, we know can't be on everything.
I know, but why?
Did you know? Hey, just a little side note. Today is National Positive Thinking Day.
See, there you go.
So happy National Positive Thinking Day. And if you want to connect with Lissi, here are all the places you can connect. I also have in the YouTube description notes all these places to connect with Lissi as well. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But yeah, be positive. And seek to understand. That's the one thing as a leader that I can say that I had to exercise, and I'm now more comfortable in now more than ever is seek to understand, and it will get you a long way. We got one more question for Brian, really quick. How much emphasis do you put on helping advance your team members' individual goals.
I love that. I think
well,
you should.
For the sake
This
of
may be another
time,
whole topic to go into. But I will
we
leave
don't put
it.
enough on it. I do feel as a society, as an industry, we don't put enough on it.
Yeah,
Period.
no, I think you should have those conversations from day one and really work to see what your team member aspires and how they want to grow, and really do those check-ins, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, and making sure you're navigating, but also being with them and where their trajectory of where they want to be at. I think it really starts with you.
I 100% agree. 100%. But thank you, Brian. Thank you,
Thank
Lissi.
you.
Again, I love it. I love the interaction. You know, if you found that this helped you, please share it with whoever, you know, on your Facebook page, with your friends, with your colleagues. We want to encourage collaboration and sharing. If you want to be a guest, maybe have Lissi interview you. Wink, wink. Email me, Kimberly@marketingdoer.com. I definitely would love to hear from you. And here's a resource link that you can get some free resources, as well as ways that you can connect with me and also be on the show. If you want to, again, last but not least, let me get rid of this little thing. But if you want to watch past episodes, just go to Google, put that hashtag in there and ThatKimberly, and I'll come up, and you can pick where you want to watch what re-watching of what live you want to watch. So I thank everyone again for joining us. Make it a great Wednesday, everyone. And we fist bump out and we're saying bye all. Have a
Bye,
great
everyone.
week.